All right.
I should have refilled before we went live.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, come on. Yeah. All right. I got one on. You see it on YouTube yet?
Nope.
You don't?
We got another super chat though.
You don't see it on YouTube?
I mean, it's like a little delay on YouTube though.
Yeah. Let's see. I hope I didn't mess it up.
Everyday Audios is live.
On YouTube?
No, not yet.
All right. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, we live on everything. If you don't know what he's talking about.
There we go. What do I need?
Hey.
Hey yo.
We live, everybody. How y'all doing out there? Everyday Audio is number 45.
45.
That's a bunch of them. Can you? I don't know if I've done anything 45 times in a row and like not messed up once.
No. Every single
This show
time.
is just flawless. I don't care what anybody says.
Flawless.
Yeah. So I'm Skip01.
Hey, I'm T Fade.
That's T Fade. And the man in the middle. I have the name up, but he should not need any introduction, but I will allow it.
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Mantz.
That's right.
Stephen
Tell us who
Mantz.
you are, sir.
Sorry.
Hello. Hello. No, we can't hear you.
You can't. Well, I'm sitting with the phone in the same position and
Okay.
I'm yapping it.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. We got you.
It's going, sir.
Tell everybody who you are.
Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Mantz. Actually, yesterday, living in the United States for 36 years. I turned 37 next month, so I'm a young guy. I wish. Short story long, and you guys can see my history on my website at zaudiocorp.com. But I used to export Hyphonics amps from South Africa before I immigrated, and then we started building here. And Hyphonics grew like wildfire because the products that I was designing and building, of course, were really ahead of their time. And come 1994, Helmut decided that he didn't want Hyphonics anymore, and it kind of went belly up. And then these guys in Chicago bought it, and they kept it for about a year and a half, and then we stopped doing business. And then, of course, Maxonics took it, and now it's an eBay market type amplifier. Yeah. And that was, I really got the start in America. And then Auditex and Crunches and the Michis of this world came to me for car amps. And then we diversified, went into home amps. My most famous is probably the Citations for Harman Kardon. We did guitar amps, we did spa amps. I've done pretty much everything, public address stuff. And now I sort of devote most of my time to designing. I do a lot of service, and if anybody needs their product serviced, you're welcome to call me and send it to us. And that's really what I do.
Well, there you go.
Manufacturing is very, very expensive, as we've just been discussing. And in fact, soon I'll be getting back into manufacturing. This is really high-end home amplifier stuff where really cost is almost no object. So building it in the US is not a big problem. And the worldwide people who buy this stuff, they demand that it be made in the US. They will not accept it made anywhere else. So that's what yours truly will be doing.
So second mortgages will be needed, folks.
Yeah, 100%.
We will not be taking.
Sidebar, Skip. It's not on YouTube, brother.
It's not. It said it was.
No, I don't know if you. I don't know if you need to click something or what, but.
Okay, it's on Facebook though, so.
Yeah.
I want to look at you guys with glasses on.
It's absolutely on there, Fade.
On Facebook?
It's on everything.
I mean, no, it's not. It's not on YouTube.
It is right here.
All right. Well, I guess I can't see it.
I mean, how you can't see it?
I don't know.
Go to our page and it's on there. Yeah.
What page? I'm on. I'm looking at it right now, crackhead.
How can mine come up? I just said our show is
Anybody watching
flawless.
on YouTube? Car Audio Guy, can you see us
He
on
is. He's
YouTube?
commenting.
All right.
Hey, Third Era, appreciate the super chat. I was reading your bio on Zed Audio, and I usually don't care about anybody's bio. I'm gonna be honest with you, but your bio was just amazingly fascinating. I read it through twice. It was just and I don't read a lot. I'm just being honest.
No, trust me.
I like pictures.
He doesn't read anybody's anything.
And it was just fascinating. The build up from you making, taking a AM radio and making like a surround sound with other parts of speakers from around your neighbors and such. That's just fascinating, like that's what it all comes from,
Yeah, that was started me off.
That's amazing.
So, do you like? Is that your formal education in electronics engineering, or did you just teach yourself these things?
No. I completed 4 university degrees, and because my parents insisted that I do it, excuse me. And then, but since a young age, I always wanted to build and design amplifiers. But they demanded that I do it, so I did it. And then I started my own company when I was 22, and been working it for myself ever since.
Wow.
What I do is self-taught. Yeah, sure, I had a grounding in electronics, but not to be blasé. What I learned, my first engineering degree was high current engineering, which in our countries is a little bit different because you do kind of vague subjects like chemistry, and I don't know what chemistry has to do with high current electrical engineering, but anyway, I did it. The one thing that I did fail miserably at was engineering drawing, just because I hate it, and to this day I hate it, but I got to do it. And then I did a second degree, pure electronics, but honestly, it didn't do much for me, but I did it. And the whole deal was I wanted to build amplifiers. That's all I wanted to do. And the big thing that I did in the home country was back in '72. I designed this 1500 watt per channel home amplifier.
Wow.
And that sort of garnered a huge amount of business for me. Yeah, it was to prove that high power had its advantages. Now, sure, it was over the top. Who needs 1500 watts per channel?
The world does. That's insane.
Yeah, but for the car, that's a different story. I mean, the stuff that I'm doing today for this home company, I'm doing a pair of monoblocks, which are 1500 watt 8 ohm amplifiers. So they will be doing 3 kilowatt into 4 ohms.
That's what I'm talking about.
So,
jeez.
What is the biggest amp you've ever built for car audio?
That I've actually built.
Or had a hand in.
It was probably building was probably the Harphonic Colossus at 600 watt a channel. But that was just a ABM. In terms of design, 2 kilowatt, because I have no real interest in going into these 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 kilowatt amps because they're inherently viable. And one of the big problems is, and I refuse to repair them. One of the big problems is that these large skateboards from China, they demand a 200 to maybe 300 amp fuse, which is effectively zero fusing. So when they blow, they take out everything inside. My designs of big amps are radically different. I use multiple power supplies. And if any supply individually fails, then it shuts off the complete amp and you can't use it. And the advantage of that is you can individually fuse each supply with a relatively low amperage fuse, that if something happens, the fuse will blow and the damage will be mitigated. These big amplifiers are stupid, ridiculous things, and most of them don't do the power. That's been my finding.
They'll do it for a little while until they blow up.
No, people don't understand that what it means to shove 200 amps of peak current onto a PC board. It's not a small undertaking. And typically, the design of the amps, they're simply not able to contend with those kind of currents. And the dissipation in the MOSFETs is typically way higher than they were designed for. And well, the puff of smoke is the end result normally.
Unfortunately, we've had a bit of an amp wars ourselves the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years about, who can make the biggest amplifier. And what we found is once they start getting bigger and bigger, they become a little more and more unreliable. So, I mean, we have 11 and a half kilowatt, 12 kilowatt amps, and they'll do every bit of it. But yeah, the bigger they get, unfortunately, the harder they fall.
Sure, it's the same as a car engine. A 12,000 horsepower dragster is technically an unreliable device.
I can see that.
Yeah, I actually used to do supplies for a friend of mine who ran a pro stock dragster, and those things were shoving 1,300 horsepower, and parts used to break. So imagine 12,000 horsepower, and it's kind of the same thing with amplifiers. It's pretty easy to make a pretty reliable 150 watt amplifier. The currents and voltages are reasonable.
Have you okay, so we have a sort of a theme in sort of it's in the SBL side of things, and I know SBL was sort of a thing back in the day, and I know like you just say you don't design amps that all that big, but full bridge rectification is a big deal now because voltage is cheap, right? AC voltage is cheap, so they don't need so many parts, and they're small and they make a lot of power, but typically unreliable. Have you ever dealt with any full bridge? We call them Brazilian style amps. Have you seen any of these designs, or are you familiar with them?
Yeah, I'm familiar with them. They run them off 280 volts or something crazy.
Some of them, yeah, absolutely. Some
That's
of them
what
are.
I've heard.
Mm-hmm. Some of them are high voltages. I think one of the largest ones was a 50 kilowatt. I think we lost him.
Right. Well, I mean, remember something. Living in the USA, the best we can get out of a wall socket, a two-phase wall socket, is 2,400 watts, and that has to include the power supply's inefficiency,
right,
and the amplifier's inefficiencies, which are typically, the nonsense that Class Ds are 90+% efficient is nonsense, unless you're driving a sine wave. But and I guess for competition purposes, the 3-second burp is effectively some kind of sine wave, whatever it is. It's basically continuous power. But typically off a wall socket here, you can get 1,800 watts of amplifier power. Off a 220 to 250 volt socket, you can get almost double that. Just depending on the country that you go to. But this Brazilian nonsense about 40, 50 kilowatt, where are they getting the power from?
Yeah, those really big amps of 50 kilowatts are like
150
what are they?
kilowatt?
Like 480 volts,
Yeah.
I think. You got to run a ton of batteries in series, but anyway, we'll get off that. We'll get off that time. I was just curious. Skippy?
Yep.
What do you got? What do you got for the main?
I was trying to look it up. You didn't find the YouTube yet, Fade?
Yeah, I'm in it.
Okay, cool. All right.
Yeah.
Did you? So you made in the what was your? I'm sorry, I'm screwing up here. So the 70s and the 80s was like that was when you were the coming up phase. You would say?
No, I mean 1970s. I wasn't in this country yet. I only got to 83.
Yeah. Well, that was when you were learning stuff.
No, 1970. I actually did live rock and roll sound. I had my own touring system. and I used to tour South Africa and what was called Rhodesia in those days. And so, it was that was a crazy time.
You
But
said
then
you
I kind of settled down.
you said you met Elizabeth
You
Taylor.
know,
Is that what I read?
What?
yes, her and my dream lady has always been Sophia Loren, and I met her. I did a gig for her and the Three Degrees. I don't know if you remember the Three Degrees.
I do not.
Nope.
The American woman. I think they were from Detroit, maybe, but I could be wrong. You can Google it.
Mhm.
And Elizabeth Taylor was a headliner, and I've always admired her, and I just wanted to see those violet eyes that she had. And I went up and introduced myself, and I nearly fainted. She was just she was just drop dead gorgeous.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah, I was a 20, I don't know how much, 24-year-old kid. So for me that was pretty cool. Even today, as a 25-year-old kid, I'd love to have seen Elizabeth Taylor again, but unfortunately she.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my
I didn't.
Elizabeth Taylor.
I didn't know that she. I mean, it's gonna sound silly now, but I didn't know she was a musician. The only thing I know of her is like what the jewelry or something she has now, or clothes or something.
He wasn't there for music. She
No.
was just.
Oh.
She spoke to me. This particular gig was in a private dining room at a hotel called the Carlton Hotel, which is the largest hotel in the Southern Hemisphere, and it only held about maybe 500 people. That was it.
Oh wow.
And so no, she had nothing. Music. The Three Degrees was the music side of it.
Oh, okay. Now I'm back on track. Thought she was up there
Yeah.
doing karaoke or something. I don't know.
Oh, bro. So, so I promised I would ask. I promised I would ask some nerd questions. So, I took a poll, and this was the most popular one. It's a two-parter. What is the sonic difference between a symmetrical and asymmetrical differential stage?
Oh my god.
And why does mobile audio exclusively use a symmetrical differential stage?
Jesus.
Okay, well, the terminology you use is technically incorrect. Single-ended.
Yes.
I love it when he's wrong, sir.
Single-ended differential is just a pair of NPN or PNP transistors, depending which way you flop them in the circuit, whereas a fully complementary differential stage is a pair of NPNs and a pair of PNPs, or they could be N-channel or P-channel J, whichever you want to do it. The funny thing is, 1984, I designed and built for Alpha Sonic the A2125 using Nelson Pass from Threshold's patent for a sliding Class A bias, which really didn't work, but they wanted it for advertising purposes. And that complementary circuit that we used, which I'd been using for years anyway, found its way into the Koreas of this world, and then it migrated by the way of copy and paste to China. And having so many schematics of power amps here on the computer, and I see basically the same component values 34 years later. So a single-ended design does not cancel even harmonic distortion, whereas a fully complementary symmetrical design will cancel even harmonics. And quite frankly, it looks good when you draw the schematic because everything's balanced.
Right.
My very early designs back in the late 60s and early 70s were single-ended differential. And then in probably 1972, I switched to fully complementary, and that's what I've stayed with all these years.
Wow, that was awesome. That was that awesome, Skippy? No, you didn't enjoy that. Let's go with something a little more generic. Where did Zed come from? Do we know?
Well, I guess you fathomed out now that I don't speak funny like you guys.
Right.
So
Right.
uh, because my late mother made us speak Queen's English, we pronounce the letter Z, as you
Mm.
call it, as we say X, Y, Z.
Right.
And because my company in South Africa was called Audio Laboratories, I decided to migrate to the other end of the alphabet. And I said, well, what can I use that will make uh, people remember the name and ask, why did you click that? And that's why I called it Z.
Well, I'll tell you, you did a good job because it's. I mean, it's legendary
Yeah,
as far as I'm concerned.
sticks out.
It really does.
Thank you.
So if you don't mind, I'm just going to take a couple of questions from the YouTube chat here. If you want to, you don't have to, but if you want to comment on the Bernie Boland debacle, uh, that's a couple of questions in the chat there.
Only comment is that I will repair the amps for the people and
Okay,
not charge them a crazy amount of.
there you go. Okay, next one. Why did Lanzar not want Zed audio name on their board on the board of their amps? Lanzar didn't want Zed on the boards.
Hey guys, I don't remember what I did 5 minutes ago, and you asked me to remember what I did. Let me see. Lanzar came to me, the late Bob Morris came to me in, I think, 88 or 89. And we built these black amps for him. And now I don't remember why he didn't want the name on. It didn't matter to me.
Yeah, I obviously it doesn't matter. Awesome. Um, what do you have a favorite like? Let's take your brand like Zed Audio out of the mix. But do you have a favorite project that you've worked on? Either a line of amps or one specific amp or anything that sticks out?
Well, obviously, my ticket to the United States was Harphonics. So even though it's a kind of an eBay brand today, um, I still have some kind of you know sort of lost love for Harphonics, but I've progressed past that point, and my interest. I'm a tube fanatic, and my interest has always been tube. But unfortunately, the companies that I've designed for have really no interest in doing tubes. However, one company that I do design for, they wanted a 4 by 100 watt tube amp, which I actually designed, and it really worked well. But then they ran out of money because that kind of project is expensive to manufacture. Even though the boards and the heat sinks would come from China, I would have had to do the manufacturing. There's no ways they could have done it. And number two, the television sweep tubes that I had designed into it are certainly not available in China. They have no interest in getting hold of the Russians and say, hey guys, send me a bunch of tubes, because that's where they come from.
From Russia?
So yeah, Russia makes incredible tubes. In fact, I have a pretty large collection of tubes, and Russian tubes from the older MiG fighters are really great tubes because they're hardened
What?
and they're robust.
MiG
And
fighters.
Get out of here! You're making that up.
no, MiG, from the MiG 19, the MiG 21, the MiG 23, and the MiG 25, they're all tube electronics.
Oh my god. You're building amps with Russian MiG parts? This is insanity. Like
I was
I was inverted.
I was inverted.
That's a MiG 23. Oh my god.
I visited Russia many years ago, and to get stuff out of there, and stuff was incredibly cheap in Russia in those days because they didn't have a free market like we have, so they couldn't put a value on something. To them, it was just an item. and they make great tubes, just really incredible.
You heard it
stuff.
here first. That's how they rigged the election 2016. Zed Amplifier tube amps.
That's right. Zed Amplifier tubes.
They sent in Russian tubes into Hillary's business.
Yep. Every voting machine has Russian tube amps.
Oh my god!
You heard it here
amazing. Holy crap!
You brought it up. I was gonna wait to ask the question later, but since you brought it up about Hyphonics and what they kind of turned into, reading your history PDF, it's just amazing. All the companies you've worked for have kind of, I guess for a lack of a better word, sold out to just high quantity, like low quality, it seems, but reading all these ones from the 80s, like, Lanzar, Autotech, Boss, Planet Audio, Alf Sonics, man, it's just amazing that all of those started out with your amps, like high end quality, but now, just went for the buck, what happened?
Welcome to America.
Welcome to America.
Because in 1998, kind of the writing was on the wall. I had a huge factory. We were building about 1,400 amps a day.
Wow.
And I saw the writing on the wall, and I said to my wife, this is just not going to last any longer. And in 2000, I sold the building, I sold all the equipment, and I went from 105 people to 6 people in 60 seconds.
That
was the deal. And because this government would never ever put tariffs on Chinese stuff, let's not get into it what they do now, but they wouldn't put tariffs on. In fact, Jeff Schoon from JL Audio, he was at that time with Precision Power, approached me to go to Washington to lobby to have massive import duty put on Chinese and Korean amplifiers.
Wow.
And I said, Jeff, tens of millions of you got to pay off the lobbyists to get this done. If they can't get duty put on motor cars, how the hell are you going to get it put on car amplifiers?
Yeah.
And well, as you guys mentioned earlier, that industry, and we were the biggest in terms of volume that we did, but that industry is gone.
That's amazing.
Complete history.
Dude, man. Crazy.
Yeah. It's just crazy reading those names, like, man, it just blows my mind what they came from,
I remember those amps as being high quality back in the day, and and now it's a shame to see them.
Planet Audio and Boss. That's Boss is about as low as you can get right now in terms of like joke wise. But
I have like 4 of his design.
That's crazy.
Bosses.
That's amazing.
And I remember somebody quoted you as saying that they double rated them or something.
Yeah, well, that was what they put up. That was what Sam Rabani did. But Boss wanted a better product, and we tried to build it at a good price. But unfortunately, we were we couldn't compete with China. It became impossible.
Man,
it's one of clients, and I cannot name them, but they wanted amps built here. And they sent out their guys.
You can't name them.
We want to get.
Oh.
And they were between 3 and 4 times what they would cost in China. With my design, my spec, everything spec by me, parts, blah, blah, blah. And I said, you will be paying that money for the privilege of having an American, theoretically, physically push the start button on an automatic insertion machine for the parts to be put on the board, and then an American to mount into a heat sink and clip it or bolt it, whatever you would do, and then slide it into a plastic bag and put it in a box. And I would personally, I would love to have everything built in America, but it's not the way of the world, quite frankly. And I follow politics and I follow financial stuff. If this country stopped doing business with China, it would be less than 5% of the GDP of this country.
Mm.
Now,
if it's
10% of it, 10%, it wouldn't make a huge difference. But the car audio industry would die completely if that happened.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, where are you going to get all the components? Like literally, like you said, you can't. I mean, you can get aluminum here.
We
You
go
can
to
print circuit
Russia.
boards, but I guess you could probably do it, but it would be prohibitively expensive.
Right. Even the high-end the home high-end companies, Mark Levinsons of this world, Krell, uh, um, Boulder, all the fancy parts that they get, which I buy as well, they're not made here. Even though they carry American companies' names, they're not made here. The fallacy that if you buy an integrated circuit from International Rectifier, which is a well-known American company, or Fairchild Corporation, which is now part of Vishay, but part of Texas, I think, or a Texas Instrument part, you have no guarantee where that silicon part was originally fabbed in terms of the silicon wafer and where it was encapsulated in its whatever thing it was encapsulated into. You have no control of it, but I can assure you, it probably wasn't made here. So when you say I'm using international rectifier MOSFETs, so what? Then they could come from Colombia or they can come from Ireland. You have no way of knowing.
Hmm. How
It's
close
a
could you
sad
get?
situation.
How close could you get to building, like, let's say 100% is like obviously the goal. Like, how close could you get to building one here? Everything.
Our local our local content in terms of the value versus what our total cost of the product was about 73%. That's the best we could do in the early days.
Wow.
Oh, in the early days.
Yeah, and then what happened was companies who were making the fiberglass material for printed circuit cards, they pretty much gave it up because they couldn't compete with China. And I can buy a fully fabricated printed circuit card. No parts on it, just fully made holes, solder mask, silk screen printing for less money that I can buy the equivalent square footage of raw material in this country. So
Good grief.
so why would printed circuit card guys do it? My late printed circuit card supplier here locally in California, he closed his factory for that very reason. And then he had another reason that the water he was sending back to the treatment plant was cleaner than the water that he brought in. And they got upset with him because they charged him to decontaminate the water.
Oh,
And-
I can see
So
that.
yeah, why would I do that?
I can see that.
right.
But you know what? As something that people don't take into account is, it's not just cheap labor. It's the fact that China doesn't have any regulations, like on pollution or the treatment of water, like you were just talking about. Which all of that
You're
adds
wrong.
up huge. All
No,
of
you're
that is
wrong.
huge.
They do have regulations, but the country's so large in not in terms so much of geographical area. It's just that it's hard to police. Whereas here, um, it it was kind of built up to be policed, and you would run afoul of the EPA if you do something wrong. And Korea then followed this country, and they police it strictly. And then, of course, it migrated to China, and now a lot is migrating to Vietnam, which is a great country for doing electronics.
No kidding.
Oh yeah, we've considered Vietnam and India. India has a tremendous electronics industry and have great guys there to do stuff.
Seems like I saw something in the news about Apple was like ready to move all their stuff to India,
Wow.
just
Yeah.
in case, just in case it gets really bad. But
Mhm.
so there's a. Do you know Andy Weimeyer? Weimeyer, Andy W from JBL Harman.
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. Anyway, he started his own company, Audio Frog, and he gets a lot of grief because he builds high end car audio stuff, and it's built in China. And his big thing is that they are there are fantastic factories in China if you go to the
Mhm.
right ones, right? And I think
Correct.
that you've shared a similar sentiment. There are crap factories in China, and then there are fantastic factories in China. It just depends on the quality control and how much you're willing to spend, I guess. So the whole made in China thing is sort of a stigma that there are exceptions to that quote unquote rule, correct? Because some of your stuff is made in China.
Well, the stuff that I design for my clients, I use a company in China, but they do everything to my spec. I design the PCBs, I design everything. They just physically put it together. I built them. I didn't physically build the bench, but I built all the equipment that goes on the bench, and they use audio precision as I do for all the testing. And my clients are very happy. Could they do better? Could they have better quality control? Of course, but comeback rates are pretty low, and if you're prepared to pay a lot more money, there are great Chinese companies. In the home audio industry, there are so many companies, and of course, me being a tube guy, I read up a lot about these companies, and they're building great equipment, and they've got some pretty cool designers. Because they're Chinese, I don't hold it against them. These small companies normally don't get Chinese government funding. They sort of have to make it on their own. It's only the big boys who backed by the government.
And that's what makes them better? Just the more hands-on or whatever, better quality control or something, or?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to companies there who charge a huge amount of money compared to the normal kind of companies. And when I visited them, you see why. They've got the act together. And because they got the act together, they're going to charge you more. Just supply and demand. That's just how the world works.
Yeah, but even like the higher end Chinese factories are going to charge or be way less than what a typical American.
Well, but the question, and I live in sunny California. The cost of a house, 50% of it is regulation. So why is it so expensive here? A funny thing, because I'm a car nut as well. Cars in China are very, very expensive.
Oh, that's right. You have
Even
to
if they're built in.
You have to like pay for a driver's license and stuff there too, don't you? Like crazy.
No, I mean, a friend of mine from Oregon. You may know him, Morgan West. He used to work for Phoenix Gold. Morgan's married to a Chinese girl, and he's lived in China for about 7 years, 8 years now. And he got his driver's license, but he just went through the normal channels to get it.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking Japan.
Strike one, fade.
Yeah, sorry. I'm retarded.
Yeah.
Listen, in China, if you're in the freeway and you see a car coming down the wrong side of the freeway, you don't even bat an eyelid. You just say good morning and off you go. That's how they drive.
Isn't there huge insurance scam? Like I seen a bunch of them just jump on people's hoods in some of those videos.
So bad.
Hey, listen, scams are all over the place.
Not regulated to China, yes sir.
No, he's not here. So I read something somewhere, and I gotta ask you this because I promised myself I would. I read something somewhere, and I don't know if it was maybe an interview that you gave one time, or if it was on your website or something. But you were quoted as saying that you would never ever make a Class D amplifier, and now that's all you make. No.
I never said that.
Oh,
I
man.
built my first class.
Strike two, fade.
I started futzing around with Class Ds in 1972, and I was using resistors. And then I got back into it in about Auditech came to me, and they wanted a more efficient amplifier because obviously those old school amps that I designed were current hog. And then I played with a smart power supply on one of the big Auditech 7600s, and I got the efficiency, substantially higher than a Class B, but it was expensive, and he wasn't prepared to pay for it. And then Nakamichi approached me, and we were building some real high-end Class AB amps for them, and they wanted some Class Ds. And so I sort of went back to my little memory bank And even this was 1999, and parts were available to me even then that weren't available back in the 80s. They just didn't exist, especially the MOSFETs. And we built them, and they were pretty reliable, and they sounded good. And I've then improved my class designs over the years. And what I design now, and I tell this to people who ask me because they're all skeptical, and Class Ds have a bad rap because of the junk that came out of Korea and China, that they sounded so bad, and they still sound bad. And my Class D designs are radically different. And when I tell people, and I'm more than happy to prove it to them, that their typical Chinese subwoofer, 15,000 gigawatts, have damping factors of less than 5, they freak. They can't believe it. And that's just the reality of those designs. They all use unregulated supplies, and I'm absolutely committed to fully regulated supplies. So the reputation that I garnered in the early days of the Harphonics, Auditech, etc., was that the amps hit harder. Because in a subwoofer amp, as all amps, but more so in a subwoofer amp, the stiffness of the supply goes such a long way to making the amp hit harder. And understand, the car audio industry is totally different to high-end home guys have no interest in hitting hard. It's not what they want.
No, that's not their thing.
Nerds.
They're such nerds. Hey, but they have a lot of money.
They do have a lot of money. They pay the bills.
Home theater guys. Oh my god. I don't blame you. All us car audio plebes are broke.
I'm committed to full range Class D for a car amp because nobody's building 20 watt per channel car amps anymore. It just doesn't exist. And when my cost, or the cost to the client to produce a block of electronics that can do 200 watts is an order of magnitude less than a Class B version. In a typical 200 watt block of electronics, 200 watt 4-ohm, of course, I can use a single pair of TO220 MOSFETs, some relatively cheap components, a coil, and a decent quality capacitor, and I've got a really nice Class D amp. To do 200 watts in a Class B, I need, if I use big Toshiba devices, I need 6 devices. Then I need the drivers and the pre-drivers and all the other stuff. And it's way more expensive because you're using up more PCB material. You need about twice the amount of heat sinking, and you got more parts cost. But I understand why people dislike Class D because of what they've heard from China. But the people who I've designed for, both the client and the people who use them, they say, wow, your amps sound better. And Class D has a particular, I'll use the word thing about it, in that they're more dynamic than Class Bs. And one of the reasons is because they're basically switching power supplies. Whereas a Class B amplifier is a linear power supply. Remember, all amplifiers are power supplies, no matter what they are. Whether they be transmitting amplifiers that transmit, AM, FM, etc., or audio amplifiers. They're all power supplies of some sort. They are converting a certain amount of energy into a different kind of energy, normally low to high. And the way that you do it in a linear amp, like a Class B, your efficiency is pretty low. But in the Class D, your efficiency is much higher. In theory, it's 100%, but of course, that's a pipe dream. And it's the way that you do it. And Class Ds, in terms of PCB layout, choice of component, choice of MOSFETs, choice of the filter components is very, very critical. And when I service every week, I get stuff from China, and they're totally clueless what they're doing, quite frankly.
So you're saying
he's saying it's not about Class D, it's about the right Class D.
Right. That was my next question. Are you saying that you're, let's just say, a well-designed, aka your Class D, someone could not tell the difference between listening to it and, let's say, a Class A amplifier or B or AB?
a Class A amp for the car, of course, doesn't exist in the real world because of the inefficiency. And we'll go into that after this. But the people who listen to mine say they sound better than equivalent Class B of sort of the same power. And
So,
that's to do with what I do in the way that a Class D works.
and you have a special sauce. This is not like what most companies do. Is that correct?
Remember, the Chinese companies build two kinds of Class Ds. They build the big subwoofer amps, which are really limited to low frequencies. In other words, the carrier frequency that they use. I mean, think of AM radio, and you'll get a better understanding. We've all listened to AM radio at some time in our lives. And the transmitter says, all right, I'm going to send out a carrier of 600 kilohertz. And on that carrier, I'm going to put the audio. And we call it modulation, but it's kind of like your mother carrying a baby in her arms. And your receiver picks up that carrier with the modulated audio, and the filters inside your AM receiver simply throw out the 600 kilohertz and, in theory, give you the 20 to 20 kilohertz. Of course, AM radio doesn't do that, but in theory, you get the 20 to 20 kilohertz. Well, a Class D amp is kind of similar. We have a high frequency carrier, and we modulate that with the audio. And the filter on the output of the amplifier simply removes the carrier, and we're left with the audio. Well, the Chinese monoblock, the typical skateboard Class Ds, they run carriers anywhere between 50 and 100 kilohertz. And well, that may sound like a lot because, subwoofer amps are limited to, say, 125 hertz, 150 hertz, somewhere around there. And the problem is that they've got to use pretty large filter parts to get rid of it. And I'm sure you guys have opened up or seen pictures of the typical Chinese Class D, of the big subwoofer, and see the size of the coil and see the size of the capacitors. And we won't even mention that they use electrolytic capacitors for part of the filtering, which are the worst kind of capacitor you could use. Then in their full range Class Ds, which are very, very popular, mini amps, etc., they will take an international rectifier, IRS 2092, which is a chip, and they'll slap a couple of MOSFETs on it, put a coil and a capacitor, and they'll have, voila, a full range 20 to 20 kilohertz Class D. They run into a couple of problems, that those Class Ds wipe out FM in a 6-foot radius. So we get a lot of questions, and I get a lot of calls. Hey, I just bought this amp and I can't listen to FM. And my answer is, please, throw away the amp and buy a decent amp. So I pay a huge amount of attention to making sure that the FM radio will play sitting on top of my Class D. And I do a lot of things to make sure that that's good. Pretty much 100% of Chinese car amp manufacturers are clueless about EMI and RFI techniques. They don't have it. They don't use spectrum analyzers. They don't do anything. They don't understand grounding on a PC board. They don't understand grounding to the shaft. And these are all the things that Class Ds are very particular. One thing that is apparent to me, and I've never seen any Chinese amp, if you take a Class B amp and you put a resistor in series with the speaker, we all know what's going to happen. Your damping factor is going to go down the toilet. Depending on the value of the resistor, it's going to get hot, and your bass is going to suffer. Now, with that said, and we'll digress a bit, we all know that good quality speakers, and forget about the woofer, let's take mid-range tweeter combos, component speakers. And a well-designed component speaker has a rather exotic passive crossover with it. And that passive crossover together with the speakers plays havoc with the amplifier. The amp does not like that reactive load. And the amp says to itself, I've got a problem. I'm not delivering my current and my voltage in phase at the same time, as against the resistive load that was used on me when said engineer tested me in the bench. Now you're asking me to drive current into this horrible load. Now, think about this. Take your 4-ohm high-quality component speaker, and put a 20 ohm resistor in series with it. And take your amplifier and redesign it to be a high voltage, low current amp, because now you're driving a 24 ohm load. Sounds good so far?
Yeah.
A 24 ohm load. Well, the amp says to itself, great, okay, you've made me into a high voltage, low current amp, which actually I prefer to be. I don't want to be a high current, low voltage amp. It doesn't suit my semiconductors. And the amp says, whoa, that nasty 4 ohm reactive load is only now 10, 12, 15% of the load that I'm looking into. I'm basically driving a fully resistive load. I will behave myself. And the sound quality is incredible. Now, how did I find that out? Well, obviously, I've known about it in theory. I took my Macintosh tube amps, and they're 350 watt mono, not small amps, physically and power-wise. But I can drive anything from 1 ohm to 64 ohm because the transformer has the taps. And so I drove a speaker, and I used to use Infinity speakers, and I listened to it, and then I converted one of the monoblocks to have a big series resistor. And I put it in series with the speaker, and that channel sounded nicer to me. And then I got people in, and I said, I'm going to switch A, B. I balanced the levels because they're monoblocks, I can do it. And every single person preferred the channel that was driving the almost pure resistive load. Now, in practical terms, guys, putting a 20 ohm, 200 watt resistor in series with the speaker is probably not that practical.
No.
It's simply because, I mean, we can buy relatively small resistors that look like MOSFETs and put them in a heatsink, but the heat dissipation would be incredible. However, I'm of the firm belief if you want to do an SQ system for the car, you have an amplifier that's high voltage, low current, put the resistor, and your results will be incredible. And whether it's for the car or the home, doesn't make any difference. And then what I did was, I always ran my Infinities on the 4 ohm tap of my Macintoshes, even though they were 8 ohm speakers, because they sounded nicer. Because they were reactive speakers. They were 4-way speakers with passive crossovers. The subwoofer was on a separate amp anyway. And that 4-way crossover was horrendous in terms of the load that it put on the amplifier. And the Macs just preferred the 4 ohm. Now, Advantage tube amps, they don't have current limiting. They are far better than solid state amps in terms of delivering huge amounts of current. So back to the Class Ds, all the Chinese designs, that famous coil, the output inductor, is in series with a speaker. It's simply a coil of wire in series, and that coil of wire has DCR, and that DCR is in series. Therefore, your damping factor goes down, period. Damping factor is simple, is designated as the speaker impedance divided by the output impedance of the amp. Output impedance being a tiny, small impedance that exists in series with the output of any amplifier. And now comes the funny thing. You guys were probably not born in 1967. The late Julian Hirsch wrote a paper on effective damping factor. You've all worked with your nice 4 ohm subwoofers, and they typically have a DCR of 3.2 ohms, typically, right? That 3.2 ohm DCR is in series with the circuit, period. No questions, no arguments. And therefore, if your amp is a great amp with a great damping factor, like our friend Bernie Boland used to quote, damping factors of 1500. Okay. Kind of sounds like a Democrat, sort of. Okay. That's a little too far. Anyway, even if your amp has an output impedance of 0.001 of an ohm, a thousandth of an ohm, what does that mean compared to 3.2 ohm of DCR? And therefore, your damping factor is about 1.33 effectively on any speaker. Your 4 ohm speaker divided by 3.2 ohm, your 8 ohm speaker divided by 6 point something ohm. That's the bottom line. However, it seems, and I've done the tests, that these big class Ds with their output coil just hanging in series with the output affects them worse than just putting a stupid 0.1 ohm or 0.2 ohm, whatever the DCR is, resistor in series with the speaker, because it's an inductive component. It's not just a pure resistor. And so there's, that's a problem with these amps. And and even on the little, the full range class Ds using the IR chip, the coil is just hanging in fresh air in series with the speaker, and they suffer the same problem. The bigger problem that they suffer in their full range is that their frequency response at about 22 kilohertz, because they all seem to follow the IR, what they call the IR odd amp PDF files. At about 22 kilohertz, you start getting a massive peak, and it can rise up to about 12, 15 dB. And that plays havoc with speakers. Speakers don't like that massive amount of power getting into them, because you can believe people drive the amps close to clipping, then try and push another 10, 12, 15 dB at ultrasonic frequencies. Think what your poor little tweeter's thinking about. He's not a happy camper.
No, not happy at all.
That's why these amps sound like garbage. Me, I'm different. I encase the complete filter within the feedback loop. So if the feedback loop has 60 dB of feedback, the idiosyncrasies of the filter are reduced by 60 dB. That's huge.
Oh, 60. I thought you said 6.
No, 60, 60.
Yeah.
So the DCR of the coil, and my coil, if you look at your big class D monoblocks from China, you'll see their coils are wound with Litz wire, many skinny wires just wound all over each other. Absolutely the wrong way to wind a coil. Why? Because the interwinding capacitance is exactly what a coil doesn't want to be. A coil wants to be a coil, not a capacitor. And a capacitor wants to be a capacitor, not a coil, or a resistor, in fact. Now, my coils are wound differently. Single layer, well-spaced, low DCR, but then I still encased it in the feedback loop. So the distortions of the coil, and coils are not perfect, the distortions of the capacitor, capacitors aren't perfect, are reduced by the amount of feedback that I choose to apply in that particular amp. Typically, in a class D, I will apply about 60 dB of feedback. And that feedback is completely different as we do in class B amps. Class B amps, I like to apply maybe 10 or 12 dB of feedback, but their mechanisms are completely different, so you can't compare them.
So basically, your amps are awesome. I'm just going to translate for everybody out there. Your amps are fantastic. And popular opinion, and listen, I've said this before also, that damping factor is like a non-issue. But what you're saying is that damping factor on some of these Chinese amps is so incredibly bad that it becomes a factor. Did you catch any of that?
Yes, and because that component, my phone on charge, because that component is a reactive component, a coil and a capacitor, whereas a resistor doesn't. Technically, a resistor is a component. In other words, the voltage across it and the current at exactly the same time.
Right.
And we alignment, and that you do not want things not to be in sync in terms of time.
Right. Okay. So another question from the chat here.
On class D.
You have a bunch of questions in there.
I know. Did you ever swap any ideas like Illuminati dinner table style with maybe Zeph? Also, have you ever been confused with Zeph and Zed? Craig Smith, Ray Rayfield, Bernie Bolin. Did you guys ever like sit down and like do the whole okay, we're gonna dominate the world thing?
Now, Robert Zeff never liked me because in 1984, the first Harphonics Odin Series 2 trounced his Zeff, that 75 watt per channel amp where he had the power supply separate to the modules, and he didn't like it. It was done in a test record. Um, Zep is a talented designer, but we physically, after that phone call, we've never spoken in 35 years.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Let's call him up.
Bernie,
Let's call him and somebody tag him.
You're joking.
you know, the most respected designer for me in the car industry, and I could be, you know, I could be wrong, but I like him, is Bruce McMillan from JL Audio. He's a fabulous guy, and I fully respect his talents.
No kidding. That's awesome. Shout out, JL.
Yes, sir.
How did the guys at Rockford Fosgate and Orion, and I guess that's Bernie Boland, feel about like the Autotech 44 and some of those 50 watters that you designed back in the day in the amp wars?
Right. Well, I don't know. You know, I don't know what Rockford did, because I didn't really have much interaction with Rockford. But certainly, Bernie was always flapping his lips and giving me, you know, a whole lot of nonsense. I was never a fan of these cheater amps. They were exactly that. You were going into competition and it's not what I.
That's like what you're most famous for. I feel like.
No, I think what I'm most famous for is probably the Harphonic Zeus and Colossus. You know, people send me them all the time to get restored, and they pay a lot of money for you know, an amp. In fact, I just did 4 pieces of Autotech where I changed all the transistors, all the output devices, the drivers, the MOSFETs, new capacitors, new pots, new RCAs, new everything. And I said to the guy, why do you want to spend this kind of money? He said, I will never part with the amps. I've owned them since they were new.
Wow.
Oh.
And here's an interesting thing. I have a crazy customer here in Southern California, and he only collects Harphonics that I built, but they got to be in the original box.
Jeez.
Not in the box, not in.
Like
and he sends me pictures regularly of the collection. None of the amps are going to work. The capacitors are dried up, obviously, but he just likes to collect them. You know?
That's amazing.
So my very first like legitimate amp, and I'm dating myself here, was a Hyphonics Ulysses, and I have been looking for one of those forever, and I found one the other day on eBay, and this guy wants $425 for it. I couldn't make myself do it, man. It's crazy. How much would it cost? Like, let's say I bought Say what?
No, you cut out for a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. How much would it cost, like, if I bought an old school Hyphonics like that and sent it to you and said, here, work your magic, do what you got to do to it? Like, how much is something like that? Can you give us a general quote?
A Ulysses probably cost you about $250.
Oh, that's not bad. So we're probably better off buying them blown up.
Yeah,
and
right.
Sending them back to
underwater.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to strip the amp completely, in terms of all the big stuff, and put it together. Some guys ask me to re-anodize the chassis, and I tell them, are you up for like a $300-400 bill just for the for the stripping and re-anodizing? Yeah,
some of them might be.
So no, nobody's ever taken me up. What I do is I do the stuff that can be the Series 8 Harphonics, which were done in gray. I repaint them, but also the same on silk screening. A one-off silk screen here cost me $370.
Wow.
A one-off silk screen in China cost me about $20.
Oh man, you're killing.
Yeah,
China's killing us.
When you look at your typical amp with a front or a rear panel with some writing on it, that's a screening on mass production cost me about 12 cents. When we were doing mass production here, those 1,400 amps a day, and my silk screener was right next door. We bought adjacent buildings, and he charged me $1.25.
Wow.
And he was screening about 2,800 panels a day. That's 1,400 fronts, 1,400 backs. And he was also silk screening the top of the amps.
So what
So-
do you have like a ridiculous like personal collection that I can like dig into? Do you have to
No.
have some stuff stacked up in your closet?
Some dead stock.
My lovely bride, many years ago, I was collecting Marantz
Shout
and Macintosh power amps and put them to the home. And we had this big factory, so it was 27,000 square feet. So I could hide stuff she could never find in a million years. And then when we got rid of that, and I brought it all home, and she saw it. I don't want to repeat what she said, but she said, in a short period of time, you will get rid of this S, starts with an S and ends in a T. You can keep your big Macintoshes because I know you like them. The rest of it's got to go. So no, the only stash I had some phase linears at the office, and I had some Marantz Model 15s, which are highly desirable, and I sold them on eBay a couple of months, and I've got another pair of Marantz Model 250s from the 1970s, and they fetch about 900 piece.
Oof.
So when I got some time, I'll redo them. But no, as far as car amps are concerned, I have zero because I lease my cars now. My last system that I did in 1994 was a BMW 8 Series, and I custom built a 12-channel amp, did the system, and at that time it was a lease car. I subsequently purchased it like an idiot, but nevertheless. So I didn't drill one single hole in the car, and I put in this. I had a quad system up front and a Triumph system at the back, and I had a custom 10-inch woofer made for me, and that was the last system, and I ran it for 14 years, and it just worked. And then the engine blew in me, and I sold it on eBay for $1,500. And I said, no more cars owned. Every car will be leased.
There's another question.
And quite frankly, guys, my drive to work is really, really horrendous. It's a pain. If I miss the one traffic light, it takes me 3 minutes and 30 seconds. If I make the light, it takes me 3 minutes. So
Oh Lord, that's not even enough time to get Spotify to boot up.
Yeah.
That's so bad.
That's why the sound system in the car is turned off. For the 3 minutes I'm in the car, going there and coming home, I want it off.
Honestly, there's about 100 questions in the chat asking what you have in your daily driver.
Yeah. There's one
stock.
Yeah. This morning we had to go to Woodland Hills, which is about a 30-minute, 35, and I had to take my wife to the hospital, and she loves loud sound. Don't get me wrong. And the sound system was off. I just wanted peace and quiet.
I get it. Well, let's switch gears. What do you have in your listening room? You're big into home theater, obviously. So what's in there?
No, not into home theater at all.
No. So you don't like music?
Strike three.
Zed doesn't even like music. Shit on it.
You don't get high. You don't with all
your music.
You never get high on your own supply, dude. You didn't know that, Fade?
Dude, I swear the
TV is.
My man's got a sound bar.
The sound part of that.
I mean, like 2-channel. I'm not talking necessarily surround sound.
He said he's got a sound bar.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah, he did.
Damn it.
Not
into it, Fade. Just get over it.
My home system is my. No.
That's awesome.
I use a turntable almost exclusive. I don't listen to CDs much.
You're breaking so many hearts out there right now, dude. I gotta tell you are breaking so many hearts. You should lie. Like, make something up, like the most ridiculous shit you can even think of.
No.
That's funny.
The priorities as it's on in age is change a little bit. And, unfortunately, I've been grey since I'm 21, so I really haven't changed that much.
There's one question from the chat, and I'm gonna do a little two-part of it. So the question is, when you designed the Zen 9 for Phoenix Gold, did they request a 9-channel, or was that your idea alone? And also, like, second part is, when they asked you to design something, did they give you exactly kind of what they wanted, or you just said, no, we're gonna do this, and then you're gonna sell it for a lot?
Right. Shut up.
No. Okay, the Zen 9 was kind of unique. It had been designed by the Chinese company who designed that chassis. I had nothing to do with the mechanicals. And I assure you, any sane human being who wants to assemble that amp needs to go see some kind of ologist. Because
psychologist.
Anything. You got some kind of disorder.
And what happened was they sent me the amp, and when I was also when I was in China visiting the factory that did it, and they couldn't get it to work, and they sent it to me, and I stripped the PCB out of the chassis, and I examined it, and I said, there's no ways that I'm even going to attempt to get this to work. So they then said, we need you to redesign it. I said, fine, and I redesigned it. That was it. It's quite frankly, it's a silly amp.
In a good way.
Average person isn't going to use the average person 9 channels of amplification in that size. Look at the size of the amp.
I saw several of them at World Final.
Wow, are you serious?
Yeah, well,
nerds.
Yeah, it had the subwoofer side was I think an 1100 watt 1 ohm, which you may not know that I'm totally against 1 and 2 ohm loads, completely against them. And then there was a pair of 150 channels, a couple of 75 watters, and a couple of 60 watters, and that was it.
Yeah, I want one bad.
Just a smorgasbord of nonsense.
I want one so bad, and I see them for sale every once in a while used, and I still can't afford it.
How much do they want for them?
Yeah, like 2,000, 2,500. Yeah. We're gonna need some more super chat donations so Skip and I can each get a Zen 9.
Shout out to Brad.
Actually,
Newsom.
I'll settle for a Hyphonic Ulysses or 2 or 7. I need 8. Well, I need 8 Ulysses. I need.
I just figured out what a 6-channel amp was, and I'm amazed.
The GoFundMe thing,
GoFundMe
for sure. For new amp.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen worse things that people want on GoFundMe. Trust me.
Yeah, no kidding. Hey, I'm not wrong in saying you designed the FPDs for Focal, didn't you? Or is that a secret?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I run that in my truck. I run the 600, the 900.6 and the 900.1 in my truck right now. And I actually own a Leviathan also.
Oh wow.
Bragger.
Yeah, I have a lot. I got a lot of Zen stuff.
Have you seen the Focal Sport that I designed for them?
For the what?
Focal Sport.
It's called the Focal.
No, I haven't seen the Sport.
It's an ATV motor. Yeah, it's a 5x7 footprint, 1 3/4 inches high, and does 612 watts a channel.
Wait, what? Hang on, I missed half of that. Say that again.
The footprint of the amp is 5x7 inches. And it's 1 3/4 inches high. And it does 612 watts a channel into 4 ohm.
What? Huh? Somebody, you got to screen share a Focal Sport right now.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Oh my God, are you serious? That sounds amazing. I thought you just say you didn't like that. 600 watts per channel in a teeny tiny. Does it sound good? Because I'm going to buy some right now.
Well, it was designed for ATVs.
It's only for ATVs, bro.
6 and 12 dB. And
that's all right.
I mean, it could be used for a car if you put a DSP processor before it.
Oh, I got that.
He's got a couple of those spare.
Yeah, I got like 7 of those.
Yeah,
does that say $1,130?
Yeah, MSRP.
Holy shit!
What's it?
The amp, the Focal Sport.
$1,100?
That's what it said. Is that? Am I reading that right?
Yeah. $1,130 MSRP.
4x175. Holy shit! I need some of those immediately.
Well,
I need to get on Team Z. Can we get a discount?
yeah, I can give you a discount on that.
I'm like, he could probably build it from the ground up.
Yeah,
for cheaper
yeah, for sure.
just,
we'll order 200 for that price.
Yeah,
from China.
Real. Seriously,
we're not picky.
We're seriously not.
It doesn't have to be a finished product, just on a piece of wood.
I actually have a couple of your micros like buried in the garage somewhere too.
Nerd.
I bought 2 of the Micro 4s because I was going to run one on each side. They're buried in the garage somewhere. Didn't you modify some of the monos to run full range?
They're all full range amps anyway. All my Class D designs are all full range, whether they monoblocks or multi-channel. Doesn't matter.
Oh, so you didn't have to modify the damn thing. Strike 4. Sweet. Are you still selling those?
The reason is it's easier to design a full range amp than a response restricted.
Oh, is it? I guess that makes sense. You need components to filter all that shit out, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I run my carriers at 500 kilohertz, so it's a big difference.
Oh, that's kind of high. That sounds high. Wait, 500 kilohertz versus.
No, that's 8 radio territory. Yeah. So I'm sorry, guys, that I burst your bubble about my car system. There is the system in my Genesis is just whatever is in there, some lexicon stuff.
Sure.
And that's it.
I'm telling you, you're killing these guys, and all these guys' bubbles are bursting.
We're gonna have to next week. You're gonna have to drop it off at some shop and just get something in there. You know.
Yeah.
Go into your stash and be like, "Look, this is what we're installing."
Who do we know out where
Steve Mead,
where you live? Yeah, I mean, how close are you to Steve Mead?
Not happening because at the end of the year the lease is up, and I drop the keys on the table and I take another one.
Yeah, that's true.
What is it? You have a Genesis, a Hyundai Genesis? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
That's the V8 rear wheel drive one, isn't it?
Wait,
I got the 3.8 liter.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm thinking.
No, the Genesis, not the.
What's the other one? Yeah.
The.
They don't even have a Hyundai emblem on the other one. The big
what
V8
am I thinking
one.
about?
Yeah,
Equus? Not Equus.
No.
The luxury one.
The original Hyundai was called the Hyundai Genesis, and then they split the brands, and now it's just a Genesis.
Yeah.
That's a sweet car, though.
Yeah, it is. I like those.
Yeah. Actually, the best. I mean, in terms of reliability and ultimate, the best car that I've ever owned, I brought with me from South Africa a 735 BMW.
You brought?
I read that. I read that.
Yeah, I put it in the container, and that was built in South Africa, and it had a high output Euro engine in it. I had just over 300 horsepower, and I loved that car. I never did a thing to it. I changed water, put new brakes on it, and never lifted the head, never touched the box. I just worked on the electronics of the car because the electronics wasn't that great, but it was fine. And that car just ran and ran and ran. But this, I got to be honest, I've owned, I had a lot of Beamers, and BMW stands for bring more wallet. That's really what it is.
I can vouch.
The 8-seater, gorgeous car, but it was just a money pit. And I got to tell you, this is my second Genesis, and they just run and run and run, and they got all the gizmos in that you need. And I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, they have like 100,000-mile warranty too, huh? It's like they know they're gonna last,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, my car's 3 years old. It's got 11,000 miles. That's meaningless.
I smell like a partnership coming. We need to contact Hyundai.
Yes.
And we get like a Hyundai with a Z design system in it, you'll have free cars for life, man. You need to like network up in here. I know you
Yeah.
said you don't do social media, but you need a pub, like
I'm gonna make
a
you a
chief-
an Instagram later.
a chief publicity officer or something. I'll talk to you after the show. We're gonna do that thing.
So I did a system for Nissan,
Oh.
and
Oh,
Nissan, but the worst thing was in 1984, Ford invited me to Dearborn, Michigan, because they had heard what I've been doing with those early Harphonics, which quite frankly were not that reliable amps, but they sounded good. And so I went to Dearborn for a week, and the funniest thing that happened to me, and I've got to tell you this, I get on this old DC-8, looked like a Boeing 707 with a 4 engine, with 2 engines under each wing, and I'm sitting on the plane, and I'm in the aisle seat. It was a 242 configuration, and there was nobody sitting next to me. And I said, "Oh, great! For however long the trip was, 3 hours to Dearborn from Los Angeles, and nobody's sitting there. Great!" And just before we push back, this drop dead gorgeous blonde comes and sits plonks next to me.
Hey yo.
No, hold up. I'm a married man. No, hold on.
Is this a story you can share?
yeah.
Is this gonna get you in trouble later? I'll cut the hard line and we'll just hear it.
No, this is all G-rated stuff. And anyway,
Boo.
she said to me, where you going? I said, I'm going to Dearborn to see Ford. And I said, where are you going? And she said, I'm going to visit my boyfriend. Okay, how old is he? Now, this thing had to be 18 or 19. She said, he's 52. I nearly dropped that out of my head. I was only 32 at that time. So
Upgrade.
I was a pretty young kid.
Good upgrade.
Yeah. And so she said to me, you're not American. How long have you lived in this country? And I said, about 8 months. She said, you learn to speak English very quickly. I said, my dear, English is my mother language. I went to Ford and I did some things for them, but their system is just not set up, and it probably still isn't, to do stuff, because all this stuff is made in Brazil, the electronics at Delco. And for them to make a change, it would take them 2 years. They could not institute changes. And I said, guys, I haven't got time for this. I've got a little company growing. Anyway, so they said, will you build these subwoofer amps for me? And I said, no. And guess who took the project? Our friend Robert Zeff.
Oh,
Out of business. Because if you mess with Ford, they will just squash you like a fly, and you're done.
Wow.
So that was my 50. I would love to. I tried to get Focal to work with Tesla, because my good friend Elon Musk speaks the same language as me, as we come from the same country. And the reason is that my Class D designs, and that's got nothing to do with the D, it's got to do with the power supply, is way more efficient than what you see in the market. And that's why I can make the amp so small. And obviously an electric car needs highly efficient electronics.
I have an electric car.
And Focal wouldn't have anything to do with it. And I said,
you have everything, Fade. Shut up.
Yeah.
I do. Why do you think I have his stuff?
Yeah.
I know these things.
Yeah. Nerd.
Wait, I couldn't tell if you were kidding or not about Elon Musk as your good friend.
Well, no, I mean he's come from the same country.
Okay, I'm just making sure. Just making sure.
He follows him
because I need to hook up on a Tesla.
Yeah.
I have no desire to own a Tesla.
Oh.
Why? Oh my god. I want.
It's so ugly inside. It's
ugly inside.
It's a big ass screen.
Yeah, I mean, I can see where you're coming from. Also, we just glossed right over the fact that all of Ford's electronics are Brazilian. Did anybody else catch that? all their stereo shit is made in Brazil. So here we go.
Well, that it's made in the Delco factory in Brazil doesn't mean that it's technically Brazilian. It could be whatever it is.
Just the fact.
No, we're going with that narrative. Made That's
in
what
Brazil.
We're gonna do.
No idea. I mean, maybe they're making the junk in China.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what's happening.
Shots fired. You got more
right.
questions?
I was gonna see if anybody had anything to ask before we start wrapping it up. So Mr. Mantz can tell us all about what he's got coming down the pipe and where people need to get a hold of him. And
Listen,
What?
did you get that?
No, sir.
no, sir.
The last person who called me Mr. Mantz, I killed him.
Oh, snap. All right. Steven. Sorry. Can I call you Zed? I'll call you Zed.
Oh, Manny.
That's my nickname.
That's funny.
Oh, that's a good one. Yes, he's Team Android, and I have no idea why. That makes absolutely no sense to me.
Duh.
Why he's Android.
Where
Android and Windows.
did I see that one question?
I don't know if he has any favorite tweeters or favorite woofers or any of that stuff because he doesn't really mess around.
Me?
Yes, sir.
For the car, my favorite speakers are still Dyne Audio.
Haha. What about the home?
I used to build for Infinity before Harman took them and screwed it up. This was when the late Arnie Nudell had already left Infinity, and I built them subwoofer amps of both high and low quality, all servo controlled. And Baskin King taught me a lot about servo, and he gave me a set of their big Gamma servo controlled speakers for Christmas present. And in those days, that was expensive. They were $6,000 for the pair, which was in those days a lot of money. Today, $6,000 for a speaker, you get a little box with maybe a tweeter inside it, And those were my kind of go-to speakers. I've always had a soft spot for Magnaplanars. The nickname is Maggies because they just impart a different kind of sound. Of course, I love quad electrostatics, but they're just unreliable speakers. If you pump any kind of power into them, they're not happy. There's too many speakers on the market to even. I mean, you could spend the next, 5 years auditioning a new set of speakers every single week, and you would not get through the so-called high-end speakers. There's just too many.
There's
it's
too
kind
many.
of the same with Amplifier. Everybody has a claim to fame of what their product does, and I've always respected good designers. Again, growing up in the pro and home industry and the recording studio industry, car audio just sort of fell into my lap because back in the home country, the biggest amp you could buy was a Pioneer GM70, which was a 15 watt per channel pair of bridged BTL amplifiers. That was the name of the game. And people said, hey, can't you build car amps? And we brought out a series called Titan, 100 watt per channel. And I couldn't build them quickly enough. People went crazy for these amps. And you've probably seen in my resume, my history, I met Helmut, that's the late owner of Hyphonics, in Chicago CES, and he had left South Africa some years ago because we knew each other well in South Africa. And he said, what are you doing, blah, blah, blah. And I told him, and I sent him a couple of amps, and he loved them. And he said, I'm leaving Alpha Sonic, I'm going to start a new company. And that was it. And that's how the whole thing, how I came here. That was the vehicle by which I got here.
Somebody just asked in the chat if you sign amplifiers, and I just remembered that you signed my micros for me when I got them from you.
Yeah, I charge $250 for signature.
That's a good call.
I don't know if somebody's setting me up for this question, but somebody said to ask, what do your take on Joseph at Earthquake trying to steal or copy the Zeus design?
There was nothing that Helmut didn't want to do anything against him because Helmut knows, or the late Helmut knows Joseph's wife, who happens to be German.
Mm.
And I wanted me to build for him, and we went up to Frisco, and my wife said to me, "You're not going to build for Joseph." And then we found out that he didn't copy the power, the multiple stage power supply, but he basically copied the amp. Yeah.
Sure.
But
See.
it wasn't my deal. Up to Harphonics to make the call.
Right. Right. Is there? There's another question from the chat. Is there any company that you couldn't or wouldn't work for?
Yeah, but I think I shouldn't say that because I don't think it's right. There were a few companies that I wouldn't touch. One of them was, of course, Joseph, but we've mentioned that. But there were other companies, both in the home and the car audio, that I wouldn't go near.
Is there just any vague reasons without giving names or any hints or something that why you wouldn't, or just
when you meet somebody, there's got to be some kind of connection on a personal level, not just, hey, I'm going to charge you this much money to build this stuff, pay the money. I have to have a personal relationship with somebody or in the company. If it's a big company like Infinity, I knew a couple of guys there who were really super, and we socialized, and we didn't talk nonsense about amplifiers and speakers. We spoke about other things. If I cannot have that, I won't touch them. And of course, one thing I always use is my standard barometer. They got to meet my wife, because she has an uncanny ability to sort out a person. And if she doesn't like that person, I don't build for that company. Simple. We've never, can't mention names, but it's happened recently. We did build, I did design, and the one person she didn't like from day one, and how I don't design for them anymore. And she proved, and I said in the beginning, and she said, "Hey, this guy's bad," and I said, "No, he's a nice guy," and she was proved to be right. And so her word is always, for me, has always been gospel, and she's never been wrong.
Wow. She still holds it over your head, doesn't she? I bet she has to.
No. It's all fine and well making money, but you've got to have mutual respect for each other. And I keep telling people on the service side, I did it to a guy yesterday. He sent in this JBL subwoofer amp, really a badly designed amp, and I drove it with no load, and the amp blew up. Didn't even have a load. I wasn't driving current. And took out a gazillion MOSFET, etc. And then I found the schematic online. I looked at the schematic, and I saw exactly what they were doing, and I said, "This is junk." And I called him up and I said, "The repair is going to be $250, but I do not want to do the repair for you. I would not feel comfortable doing it, and I do not want your $250.
Wow.
And he said, "Okay." And I do that. I won't say reasonably often, but I do it from time to time. But I tell the person, it's not worth your while repairing this amp. Don't do it. Because quite honestly, each $250 is not going to make me a wealthy man overnight.
Right.
So I'd rather be honest with guys. It's the same thing. When people say, "Do you charge for the amp?" No, I only charge to repair it. I don't think it's correct to charge somebody to just look at the amp, because quite frankly, I can take it and put it in, and in a couple of minutes I know what's wrong with it. And then charge the guy $65 for that. That's in my opinion. I don't go by that. I only charge for the repair.
It's interesting how many questions we're getting about how you feel about other amp designers. But one in particular is interesting, and that's Dirk Ecker. Do you know who that is?
No.
I think that. Say what?
Who does he design for?
I think he's the U.S. Acoustics guy now, and that's interesting because Wasn't that your designs for a while there?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think that's his company now. But if you don't know him, then obviously you have no opinion about it.
No.
Strike 5.
I know, dude. I'm just like left and right, just whiff, whiff, whiff. And Mike Diaguardo's in the chat now, so we have got to ask you
Yes.
about GANFET. Do you have any idea what that even is? Gallium
Okay,
nitride.
well, GaN FETs are a relatively new technology. They have some major advantages over standard silicon FETs. However, for high-powered Class D designs and power supplies, they don't cut the mustard. You'd have to use an inordinate amount in parallel, and then you defeat the object of the exercise. I'm all for new technology,
Fuck you,
and
Dio.
for these home amps that I'm busy on, they all use switching power supply because nobody wants these huge transformers that weigh a ton. Excuse me. And the GAN stuff just is not suitable for the offline power supplies. They just don't they don't work well. They're just not high enough current. And I've investigated them fully for Class D designs. And sure, if you want to build a little 50 watt per channel Class D, that's fine. Nobody to this day is asking for a 50 watt Class D.
Except except the GANFET people. Actually, no, the current quote unquote GANFET that's out there, I think it's 250 watts per channel. It's a 2-channel, and it's pretty expensive. And from what I understand, it's like a hybrid. It's not exactly a conventional or a classic. Maybe Mike can.
I don't sit in front of the computer and say I'm going to investigate GANFET. I guess, and I've got a lot of PDFs on them. But what I've seen is they're not particularly high power, and maybe in the intermediate time, and I don't spend time looking at them, that they've come out with new versions. But it's kind of the same as high-speed diodes that have no reverse recovery time. I use them in the switching power supplies because they really do a good job. And they're expensive. It's $11 for a single diode.
Is that a lot?
The advantage of that diode in an amplifier that sells for $200,000, an $11 diode makes no earthly. Well, there's actually two of them. $22 worth of diodes make zero difference to the bottom line for obvious reasons.
Well, there you go.
But GAN, it's GAN FETs is the buzzword. In the early days, when I first came out, all our power supplies used transistors, not MOSFETs. And then, I don't know, about 1985, MOSFETs they started making better and better MOSFETs, and we started using them. And then everybody jumped in the word MOSFET amplifier, MOSFET this, MOSFET that. And, buzzwords have abounded in the power audio industry. Damping stuff. There was, of course, MOSFETs. Then there was low ESR capacitors. They didn't know what they are, but it was a cool thing to say, low ESR, 105C capacitors. GAN FETs is the new thing.
So since you don't follow social media, there's a guy, he used to have designed for Rockford Fosgate. His name's Tony DeMore, and he's doing his own amps. Oh, do you know Tony? He's doing his own amps now, and he has like a 1500 watt 2-channel Class A amp. Have you seen this thing?
Can't be Class A.
No, I'm assuming it's like really, really heavily biased for him to say that, but that was going to be my next question. What's the deal with Class A in car audio? Is it a thing? Is it possible? Is it all just heavily biased, or what's the deal with that?
Pure Class A is defined as that the load current must never exceed the standing current in the output stage, whether it's tube, MOSFET, transistor, doesn't matter. the speaker current, the peak speaker current must never exceed the idling current in the output devices. Be it single-ended, push-pull, doesn't really matter.
So just to clarify, that means if you're drawing, let's say if you want to push 50 amps into your speaker, that means you have to have 50 amps or more from the battery, right? Is that what you're saying?
No, not from battery. In the output stage of the amplifier. Remember, every amplifier has a power supply and then there's an amplifier. So it's not 50 amps from the battery, it's more because of the inefficiencies of the amp itself and the inefficiencies of the power supply. So I'll give you a simple example. Let's use a 100 watt amp into 4 ohm, which represents 20 volt across a 4 ohm load. 20 volt across a 4 ohm load. That means there's 5 amps of RMS current flowing into the speaker. And that means times 1.414, for easy arithmetic, let's just call it 7 amps of peak current. Okay, forget about stereo, it's a monoblock 100 watt 4 ohm. Therefore, the output stage has to have at least 7 amps of idling current. Okay? That output stage for a 100 watt amp has got to be about a plus minus 35 volt supply to do 100 watts in a 4 ohm. Well, if you take 7 amps times 35, that's about 230 odd watts. Okay, that represents in a push-pull amplifier in theory, a 25% efficiency. Let's just call it 250 watts for easy arithmetic. Therefore, another 750 watts of heat has to be dissipated. Amplifier alone. Now we've got a power supply that's got an efficiency of probably about 85%. So let me just get a calculator because I can't do all this fancy arithmetic in my head all the time. So you've got 1,000 watts. You've got 700. No, you got 1,000 watts because you've got 250 watts there divided by 0.85. So you've got 1176 watts, 1,200 watts. And if you divide that by your fancy 12 volt battery, you got to idle the amp at 100 amps from your battery. 100 amps.
Just being on. Yeah, just being on.
For a monoblock 100 watt. Now, if it was single-ended, it would be half that efficiency again. But okay, let's assume, as I do, design push-pull Class A's. But the Class A has its other inefficiencies, and that 25% normally drops to about 15% in the real world. So we do the whole calculation again, and the 100 amps will start approaching 130, 140 amps. As you turn the amp on, that current is flowing to your battery into your 100 watt monoblock. Let's make it a 50 watt per channel. It's still the same current, 50 watt per watt. Same arithmetic. That's the bottom line. So when Tony said to me, oh, he's got this, he said it was 400 watt per channel Class AM. And I said, what, are you towing the thing in a trailer with liquid nitrogen? What are you talking about?
Right.
Oh, yeah, he said, and then there was something on the internet about, oh, he had to rebias the amps because they were getting really hot. If you define your amp as X watts per channel or mono, whatever you want to call it, and then you say it will run in pure Class A up to this wattage, whatever it is, 5 watts, 10 watts, into a 4 ohm load. Because into a 2 ohm load, it's in Class B immediately because the current is twice that. So it will be at some very low power, a pure Class A amp. So when somebody writes that kind of stuff to me, my BS antenna stands up immediately because it's BS. And you can Google anywhere you want. And in fact, on my website, under the Tech Talk link, you will see a thing that I did many, many, many years ago on this Class A nonsense that people claim. And it's just not feasible in a car. Now, sure, if you said to me, I want a 5 watt per channel Class A for my purest car audio system that never gets louder than 20 dB or something stupid, of course a 5 watt per channel is quite feasible. imagine trying to sell a 5 watt per channel amp.
Zuki did it.
Not gonna,
Zuki, there's a car company called Zuki that that's how they marketed their amps, like 5 watts a channel.
They were copycats of the Soundstream Pro series, and he came to me from Vegas with all these amps, and I repaired a whole bunch of amps for him. And this guy was crazy.
Zuki?
Well, the guy, his name wasn't Zuki. The name of the company is Zuki.
Right. Oh, that's amazing. That's awesome. I assumed you hadn't heard of it.
Lunch, and he only ate rice.
Say what now?
He didn't eat anything. I took him out for lunch. We took him out for lunch.
I like that diet. I like that diet.
He must have read the Starch Solution. I
can subscribe to that.
So you're telling me that my high dollar Italian amp that says I have 75 watts per channel of Class A on the front channels is lying. They're lying to me.
Yeah, I would say that. No, I would challenge them directly to prove that it's a pure Class A amp.
Yeah,
there's only one there's only one definition that, and if you state it that my amp is Class A up to this power, that's one issue. But if you say I've got a pure Class A amplifier, you are automatically saying that at whatever power level, that amp is pure Class A into that given speaker impedance. You have to define the impedance, because as I say, if you go from 4 down to 2 ohm or 8 down to 4 ohm, and you only quote it into the higher impedance, if you're at the lower impedance, when you get to that peak current required for your speaker, the output state switches into Class B immediately. It has no other way to operate.
Yeah, maybe into 64 ohms. I'm not sure, but I have a very expensive amp, and it's Class A on the front, Class AB on the back, and Class D on the sub. It's a 5-channel.
But remember, guys, your Class A amp, you don't even have to drive into a load; it will still dissipate the same heat.
Oh, that's right, because it's always on.
Always on.
So we just got joined by a co-host of another podcast that I have a feeling you're going to be on here very, very shortly. Hi-Fi Vega from 12 Volt Talk just joined, and I'm assuming you're going to have to make that round too, because these guys are they're old school stereo. I'm actually wearing old school stereo shirt right now, and that's what they do. They test old school amps, they do bench racing, and that's all they do, and they talk about old school stuff. So you're definitely gonna want to go on their podcast and talk to their people.
Stop digging.
I'm sorry. Hey, we love 12 Volt Talk over here. Well, at least we love Rob. I don't know about Big.
I don't like either of them.
Yeah,
we have beef with them. Don't go on their shit.
Yeah, we got beef. It's sort of like the amp wars back in the day. It was podcast wars.
Yeah,
these days.
Well, we're winning, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, we're definitely winning. All right, so we got to wrap this up. We have to wrap this up.
We appreciate the time, sir.
I'll tell you what, man. It's been a pleasure.
I gotta decompress all this information. Like, I gotta go back and watch this 3 or 4 times.
I seriously have to go back and watch our own podcast.
Yeah, I never do that either.
I never do that. I'm gonna have to embarrass myself and go back and watch this.
I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm more than happy to come back on your podcast. And you're welcome to email me or call me.
Yes, sir.
And I'll answer whatever question.
So, where can people get in touch with you, and what are you doing these days? What do you have coming out? Just give us a brief synopsis.
Well, most of my time is designing, especially this home project. It's a huge project. I have to design 18 different amps and preamps. And if I tell you this, one of them is a monoblock 250 watt pure Class A.
Oh, we just got done talking shit about Class A.
So they want it, and I explained to them about the heat situation, and they will not accept cooling fans. And I said, guys, if you put a pair of these monoblocks on in the United States and Canada, forget about it. The wall plug will not support it. Simple.
No.
You got to bring 208 or 220 volt 3-phase in, and then you'll be on the cusp. And I said, honestly, If you want to bring out 100 watt per channel pure class A, that is reasonable. The cost will be less. You can use it pretty much anywhere in the world. I said, in my opinion, the 250 watt is used for mid-range and tweeters in multi-way systems. There's no point in 250 watts. It's a pointless exercise. So anyway, we just before I actually got on the phone with you, Taylor, I was speaking to them, and I'm trying to persuade them that you've got to be practical about things. So anyway, that's what I'm doing in the home front. On the car front, I pretty much service my customers. I do a lot of service. If you want to get hold of me, either, and am I allowed to give my phone number and email address?
Of course.
My phone number is 805 area code 499-5559. That's 805-499-5559. And my email address is smm, that's my initial, Stephen Mark Mantz, at zaudiocorp.com. And you're welcome to call me or email me. And, certainly try and help guys. A lot of people come to me because they cannot get their stuff repaired in other places. I had a simple incident the other day that a guy sent it to some local radio TV outfit, and they replaced all the capacitors on the 12-volt side of the amplifier, but the amp had a problem in the preamp, and I was trying to figure out why they changed the capacitors on the 12-volt side when they were perfectly good. Anyway, that's the kind of things that people go through, and they come to me because they know they can get a repair done at a reasonable rate.
Do you just service your own amps, like your old school amps, or do you?
Anything. The only thing I will not do are the skateboard class Ds from China. I have no interest, because what I can charge for 10 hours of labor,
they just buy another one.
Yeah, that's true. I used to make that argument all the time for people buying these ridiculous 3,000 watt amps for $200. And I'm like, what are you going to do when it blows up? You're not going to send it in for repair to pay $250 to get it repaired. You're just going to buy another one. So it's disposable, So yeah, absolutely. So do you have like a cutoff? Does it have to be AB? Does it have to be D? Or how big does it need to be?
That's what she said.
I mean, when a guy says to me, I got a 3000.1 D, I know exactly what he's talking about. I don't care whose name is printed on the amp.
Yeah,
it is what it is. I will not touch US amps. Remember US amps from Florida?
Yes.
With the little palm tree with the LED in the middle of the palm tree.
Yeah, you won't touch those?
I will. The only ones I do, but not that often, are the tube hybrids, and people want the tube section changed because it sounds so awful, so I change it. But as far as the other stuff is concerned, I will not have anything. But otherwise, I pretty much do the amp.
I think that answers one of the questions that we had in the chat, actually, because I mistook Dirk Ecker for being U.S. acoustics when he's actually U.S. amps. So I guess that answers the question. There you go, 2 for 1. All right. So if you need to get a hold of Mr. Zed Audio, you guys rewind this, get his phone number, and his email there too. Also, you can get all that stuff if you go to zaudiocorp.com, since most of us have internet, and he's really good about answering emails. So, any parting thoughts there, Skippy?
Information overload.
For real, seriously,
I love it. I love it.
It's swole up right now.
See, this show is more laid back. We don't hardly ever do all this technical stuff, but I love when we do. Like even though I don't know most of it, like I like to hear it. Like I like to hear it and think I know, but you know what I mean.
I like to pretend like I don't know.
Yeah, Fade knows really more than everything. And it annoys me.
No, seriously, like I'm
like
a little dumbfounded. A lot of the stuff that he's throwing at us, I was like, hang on, just give me a minute to absorb this, and then have a response.
What was that word?
Right? I'm like Googling.
What's that? You cut out.
as far as the technical side, I simply skimmed the surface today.
Yeah.
Want more?
Yes, that's
bet.
what we're scared
Yeah,
of. That's
that-
what we're afraid of.
I don't want the rest of the iceberg, sir.
We just need to chip away at
Yeah,
it. We might
yeah,
have
yeah.
to have you like back on a weekly
We
basis.
gotta ease
just
it
to-
in. Ease
Yeah,
it
we'll
in.
have an ask Zed anything like episode. You know what I mean? Just like a little segment on each
AMA.
podcast. Dude, that would be awesome.
All right, let me know.
Hey, that's what.
Confirmed.
Bang, that's what I'm
You're
talking
silly.
about.
Yeah, I do feel.
All right.
I do feel smart after this show. I feel like I
I
can
do.
do anything now.
I feel like I learned something.
Yeah, I did. I didn't.
like it.
I didn't learn, but I love it.
All right.
Let me say in parting that for me, when people call me every day, every week, for me to help people and impart a little bit of my knowledge to them, to help them do better in whatever they want to do, that for me is a high. I really enjoy it.
And we dig that about you. And honestly, that's awesome. Seriously, that's what it's about. That's why we do this podcast. You know,
Share information, improve what you do. And that's why I'm a member of only one forum. It's an English high-end home forum, and there's super clever guys in it. And for me, it's a thrill to learn from other guys who know more about certain things than I do, and that's just great for me.
stop it. There's nobody that knows any more than you do. Just quit. The humility is killing me. Just stop it.
Hey guys, I'm not a digital guy. I'm an old school analog tube guy.
Wait, buddy.
And I wish I'd done to learn digital, but I didn't. And anyway, digital guys know a lot more. And there are many designers, especially in the home arena, who know more than I do, and I respect them. And if I can learn a little bit what they know, I'm more than happy to learn. So,
Do those guys on that forum know who you are? Like in real life?
Some when I reply to a thread, some know who I am. Some don't.
What's the name of this forum? Because I'm going to join immediately.
English high tech something.
No. It's called DIY Audio, and it has nothing to do with our friend here in America.
Oh, wait, DIY Audio. That's the one where Patrick Bateman's always posting. Is that right? DIY Audio?
He doesn't know no Patrick.
I'm telling you, he knows who Patrick Bateman is. I'm telling you.
I can't remember what I did 10 minutes ago. No, I mean the URL is DIYaudio.com.
Is it like
it's
purple?
A great forum. Yeah, that's kind of black and purple. I'm looking at it now.
Yep.
And there's so much to learn on this thing. And if you look at the one thread, it says 200 watt IRS 2090 amp for $20, and that's what the Chinese build basically.
Everybody go join DIYforum.com immediately.
Right, and it's what's nice about it. There's no swearing and dissing and shouting, and if you do it, and a few people have done it, and they get thrown off the forum, and they can never ever go back to it.
I'm out.
Which is
You done?
For me,
No, I'm out. I
for
can't
me,
be on
a
that forum.
is to learn.
Honestly, I have done a lot of reading on that forum, and I think anyone who's sufficiently educated in anything acoustic has been to that forum and knows exactly what you're talking about, because there are some crazy threads on that forum. DIY Audio.
Look, there's newbies on the forum who don't know much, and that's fine. You've got to start somewhere. But there's some really smart guys, and I love it. No.
What's your screen name on there? Is it Zed? Oh, you're not telling us? All right, I see. Don't play coy.
Yeah, no.
You want to know what my handle is on the forum?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's Moer, M-O-E-R. It's a Dutch word, and I'm not going to tell you what it means.
MOER.
Somebody Google that immediately. MOER.
Yeah.
Does it have
Afrikaans?
Does it have two
It's an
dashes over the O?
No, we don't have the two little dots on the E or the O. It's just M-O-E-R, and it's a North Afrikaans.
All right. What does it say? What does it say?
Does it say, is it nut?
Probably not.
I don't know. That's what I got on Google.
I know
Or mother. Mother?
I I have a feeling that
Bolt.
Okay, I'll give you a hint, guys. Just Google swear words in Afrikaans.
Afrikaan. Are you Chris? All right, we're cutting the hard
Wait.
line on the
on the
nut.
Give us one good goodbye slang from South Africa. Anything you want to.
Give us a cuss word. We're going.
Or some kind of phrase. Some kind of phrase.
You really want that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Ek wil jou naai.
Ek wil jou naai.
On you. Yeah, you.
There it is.
Ex Vernier 9.
Ex Vernier 9.
Hey, we appreciate it, sir. Appreciate your time. Man, this was fun.
My pleasure.
This was awesome.
All right, I cut it.